Hello viewers, welcome to Kashmir Life Interviews. Today we are joined by former Union External Affairs Minister and former Finance Minister of India, Mr. Yashwant Sinha. His Concerned Citizens Group has been visiting Jammu and Kashmir ever since 2016. They have presented 8 reports on Jammu and Kashmir and were recently here in Srinagar. Today we are going to be talking to him about the recent all-party meeting post-August 5 with the unionist politicians of Jammu and Kashmir, and also how they see the scenario currently in Jammu and Kashmir in view of the recent delimitation exercise kick-started by the Government of India. Mr. Sinha, welcome to Kashmir Life. My first question is that your Concerned Citizens Group started your journey, Kashmir journey, Jammu and Kashmir journey in 2016. What has changed in your view in Kashmir since you first came here?
I think what has changed is geography. Government of India has used geography as a weapon and split the state. As you are aware, I am aware, everyone else is aware. So what has changed is that from a state of Jammu and Kashmir, which included Ladakh, Jammu and Kashmir is now a union territory, and Ladakh is another union territory. This is the first time in history that a state has been reduced to the level of a union territory, as you're aware. So that is the major change between our earlier visits and this visit.
Vis-a-vis the change you're talking about on the ground, because you have been on the ground, you have come almost 8-9 times here now, and you have come out with reports also. So vis-a-vis change, how is the security scenario? How do you view it when you were here? You were recently here as well. How is the security scenario? How do you see the militancy in Jammu and Kashmir?
Well, militancy continues, and even after our visit, militancy has continued. There are almost daily reports of engagements or clashes between the security forces and militants in some part of Jammu and Kashmir or the other. So there is no let up as far as militancy is concerned. The second is that, we basically go there to understand the mood of the people. What are the people thinking? And we found this time also that while business is normal, people are going about their daily lives, and it might appear on the face of it that everything is normal, and militancy is confined to some people and some parts. Deep down in the psyche of the people, there is a great deal of disappointment, which is growing by the day. They may not show it, and it's a good thing that they are not coming out in the streets and they are getting killed. There is no point in that. So I congratulate the people of Kashmir especially that they are patient and they are not getting killed as maybe some people would want them to.
In your recent report, which was published, you said, and I quote, "Every action of the center, therefore, is being viewed as diminishing the Kashmiris as political entities and shrinking their democratic political space." So, sir, in this context, how do you see the recent outreach by the center to the unionist politicians in Jammu and Kashmir?
What happened in that outreach? We spoke while we were in Srinagar with people who had attended that meeting. I also felt that, okay, it was a good beginning, at least dialogue is being resumed. And as you will recall, in our various reports, we had said that there was a need for the Government of India to engage all stakeholders in a dialogue. That was a policy which Mr. Vajpayee had followed when he was Prime Minister. And he even got Mr. Advani, who was the Home Minister, and Deputy Prime Minister talking to the Hurriyat leaders. Could not progress much because we demitted office soon thereafter. So dialogue is the only way out. Though nothing came out of the meeting, not even a a decision that we'll meet again. Even that was not decided. But yet, it was a good beginning because both parties engaged in a dialogue with each other.
In your views, what led to this meeting? Because the center had been calling some of the participants who are in the PhD as the Gupkar gang. So basically, what led to this? Why did the center, in your view, why did they initiate it? Why did they feel the need?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. But you are aware of the fact that the geopolitical situation in our region is changing and is changing very fast. And I'm sorry to be saying this, but Kashmir could soon become a melting pot if we are not careful. So much more of it than it is at the moment. So that may be one of the reasons why the government of India decided to reach out to the leaders of Jammu and Kashmir. But as I said, that's not enough. Even this government and the BJP is committed to talking to all stakeholders. So talking merely to the political leaders is not enough. They should reach out to all stakeholders, which includes civil society groups, which includes social leaders, which includes others who are not directly in politics. So Government of India, if it really wants to reach out to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, then the dialogue should be with all stakeholders.
In your report, you talked about anger, hurt, and unhappiness among Kashmiri people. In your view, how can that be addressed if there is anger, hurt, and unhappiness post August 5?
Let me tell you that from the very first visit that we made in 2016, and in all visits thereafter, what is it that one has noticed while talking to the people of Jammu and Kashmir? And I'm not only talking of the leaders, I'm talking the real man in the street. It is a trust deficit. Somehow for decades, there has been a trust deficit. I'm not saying the people of India and the people of Jammu and Kashmir, but certainly the government of India and the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And this is an issue which has to be resolved. The trust deficit has to be eliminated. It has to be removed if you really want that there should be real reaching out to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And how do you remove the trust deficit? By repeatedly engaging in a dialogue, as I said earlier, with all stakeholders.
The mainstream politics in Jammu and Kashmir, everybody was actually detained post August 5. So how do you see the mainstream politics right now in Jammu and Kashmir, and also the politicians in Jammu and Kashmir?
I will refrain from passing a judgment on the politicians. These politicians have been there for decades. They have earned the trust of the people many times. They have succeeded in elections. So therefore, you can't rule out any other stakeholder. Similarly, you should not rule out the political leaders. The political leaders will play a very important role. After all, if and when elections are held, who will contest these elections? It will be the political leaders or the people chosen by them. It will be the political parties. So therefore, let's not look at partyless democracy in Jammu and Kashmir, for which the time is not right yet.
Question basically was, has the mainstream, in your view, been pushed to the wall post August 5?
I didn't get that impression. They have come out quite clearly with their views. I don't think there are, barring a few sycophants of the government of India, most of the mainstream political parties have opposed the moves of August 5 2 years ago.
On restoration of statehood, it's being presented as if statehood is restored, everything is going to be all right in Jammu and Kashmir. You have now vastly covered Jammu and Kashmir. Is it enough for J&K?
I had tweeted some time ago, some weeks ago, that if your policy is to take back 100% and then return only 50% of that 100%, then you are a winner because you still retain 50%, but that's a bad public policy. And if that is the policy of the government of India, then it's a bad policy. This will not be acceptable to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So, of course, there should be restoration of statehood. But should that be enough? No, that is not enough. That's only restoring the status quo ante. So, therefore, we have to go much beyond that in order to be able to win the trust of the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
How different do you see that recently Mehbooba Mufti of the PDP basically said that a wedge is being created between Jammu and Kashmir regions. So you've basically seen both of them. So do you see that? Have you felt that there's a wedge being created between Jammu and Kashmir?
Well, I was a little surprised at the speed with which delimitation is going to be carried out in Jammu and Kashmir. In fact, the Delimitation Commission was visiting Kashmir Srinagar when we were there. And, earlier it was said that delimitation will happen also in Assam and Jammu and Kashmir simultaneously. Then Assam fell out. Only Jammu and Kashmir is going through the delimitation process. Why? Why couldn't this wait for delimitation in the whole country? After all, Jammu and Kashmir is a part of India. So, why not wait for delimitation to take place all over the country, including Jammu and Kashmir? Why single out Jammu and Kashmir for delimitation at this point of time? And this raises doubts about the intention of the government of India.
What could you gather from the ground about the delimitation exercise? How did you feel the people feel about it? Because because all these political parties which basically met the commission have told that there's a trust deficit. People think that something is going to happen to favor some political party. It was said by the National Conference, the PDP. So did you see that suspicion on the ground among people?
Yes, it is. It is true. The political parties were only representing the people of Jammu and Kashmir and their feelings when they met the Delimitation Commission. And let me also tell you that it's a good thing that political parties met the Delimitation Commission of Jammu and Kashmir, because there is no point in boycotting, let's say, Delimitation Commission, not talking to them, or boycotting elections.
So how do you see the elections? Would they change a lot in Jammu and Kashmir?
Well, as far as elections are concerned, let me tell you that the moot question here is, will election be held after restoration of statehood? After delimitation, yes. But after the statehood has been restored, in what form it has been restored? So this is an question which is not yet answered. But as I was telling you earlier, in whatever situation, circumstances, elections are held, my recommendation to the political parties will be, don't leave the field free for the BJP and don't allow them to misrepresent facts before the rest of the country that they are the only major political parties. Take part in elections, show where they stand, as you did in the case of DDC elections.
As former finance minister, how do you see the economic scenario in Jammu and Kashmir? Because it has seen 3 subsequent lockdowns since 2019.
The economic situation has been ruined. In these lockdowns, the economic situation has been ruined. We met members of the Kashmir Alliance, talked to them in detail about the state of the economy, trade, industry, tourism, everything, transportation, everything has suffered a great deal. And people have lost their incomes. People have become unemployed. There is a huge reduction in local demand. So the economy and it's not picking up. So the economy of Jammu and Kashmir has suffered a great deal, something which does not come out and is not known to the people of the rest of the country, that people in Jammu and Kashmir are suffering. People told us that 9 out of 10 people who are employed have become unemployed. as a result of this deterioration.
Development was something which was talked about when abrogation of reading down of Article 370 happened. So, how much development did you see post August 5 in Jammu and Kashmir?
We especially asked the people that we met about development on the ground post 2019 August 5, and they said there is no difference. There is nothing worth reporting. These 2 years have been wasted. And the promises made to the people of Jammu and Kashmir directly by the government of India have not materialized, and governor's rule has not changed the situation on the ground also.
In your report, you said Kashmiri people feel alone in their struggle. So, in that light, how do you see the recent ceasefire between India and Pakistan?
When we said that in our report, what we meant was people in the rest of the country. But that feeling may or may not be correct. We have gone to Kashmir every now and then only to convince the people there that we meet that government of India is not the people of India, and that the people of India are still concerned about the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. And I remember that I have been asked to visit a place as far away from Kashmir as Hyderabad, and there was a talk organized for me especially to talk about Jammu and Kashmir. So there are people who are interested in understanding the real ground situation in Jammu and Kashmir.
My question on ceasefire: how do you see the ceasefire between India and
Ceasefire is a separate issue. Ceasefire, of course, brings relief. I remember in one of our trips we had traveled along the international border in Jammu and the LOC, and we saw with our own eyes the damage which continuous shelling from both sides was doing. So ceasefire is a very welcome move by both the countries. Obviously, at some point, somewhere, there is a back channel which is working between India and Pakistan, and the ceasefire was a result of that. And you will recall that in 2003, when I was the External Affairs Minister of India and Mr. Vajpayee was the Prime Minister, that was the time that we had announced ceasefire between India and Pakistan. And that ceasefire extended even to Siachen. So, and we saved thousands of crores of rupees in both countries as a result of this ceasefire. So ceasefire is welcome from various angles.
As former External Affairs Minister, how do you see the US withdrawal from Afghanistan? How do you see this region in general and Kashmir in particular?
Well, history has repeated itself. We know about the British having gone into Afghanistan and then withdrawn. We know about the Russians having gone into Afghanistan, Soviets at that point of time. They had to withdraw. Now the Americans have withdrawn after 20 years. I am concerned at the situation in Afghanistan. And the fast pace at which Taliban appears to be conquering one territory after another does not augur well, both for Afghanistan as well as for the whole region, unless the Taliban undergoes a fundamental change and gives up some of the principles that they hold dear to their heart. Unless the Taliban changes, it's going to cause problems in that country, namely Afghanistan, and in the region.
The era of Atal Bihari Vajpayee as Prime Minister has been talked about in Kashmir. It's been said that there was almost a resolution to Jammu and Kashmir, the problem of Jammu and Kashmir. So you were a minister back then in the Union Cabinet. So what was it? What was it, if you can divulge some of the details?
No, there is no need to. I mean, most of the details are out. You see, on the one hand, Mr. Vajpayee reached out to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And when he talked about Jamhuriyat, Insaniyat, Kashmiriyat, this is what the intention was, to reach out to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Militancy does not represent the historical character of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Because Jammu and Kashmir, why do we talk about Kashmiriyat? We talk about Kashmiriyat because it's a unique phenomenon representing the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So Mr. Vajpayee reached out to people in Jammu and Kashmir. As I told you earlier, he even got Mr. Advani talking to Hurriyat leaders. And on the other hand, he reached out to Pakistan. And we made a great deal of progress with Pakistan. I was present in the SAARC summit in Islamabad in 2000. It was a bilateral meeting between Musharraf, and at the end of it, we issued a statement. I consider that statement to be important documents in Pakistan relations. Though this happened in January and in May we demitted office, so we could not make progress in terms of the expectations that we had. And then the UPA government came, they tried in their own way, but we did not make the kind of progress which we had expected to make with Mr. Vajpayee as Prime Minister of India. This is what was achieved on January 6, 2004. And if we had continued in government, we would have certainly insisted on Pakistan to hold on to its promise. And that would have done a great deal to not only improve the relationship between India and Pakistan, but also to resolve the issue of Jammu and Kashmir.
My last question to you is, in your view, what is the way forward? What is the solution?
To my mind, the solution is not very complex. The first thing is that Government of India should reach out to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. By bifurcating the state and playing ducks and drakes with the geography of the state. Second, a very important part of this will be to start talking to all stakeholders. And when I'm talking of stakeholders, as I have explained it to you earlier, it means not only talking to the political leaders, it means talking to people like you. It means talking to everyone who is interested in representing a certain point of view. So talking to all stakeholders, and we should put mechanisms in place to start that dialogue and finish it as quickly as possible in a time-bound manner. That should be number 2. Number 3, we should reach out to Pakistan, and this ceasefire along the line of control and the international border is something which should further be strengthened.
That was former External Affairs Minister and Union Finance Minister, Mr. Yashwant Sinha, talking to Kashmir Life.